We have a very special guest with us today who you probably know from social. We have the incredible Dr. Mamina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Dr. Mamina is not only an incredible medical professional, but also a very successful medfluencer. And today we're going to talk about her journey on her very first brand deal. And I believe it started with a familiar shampoo that many of you have heard of.
Yes, I would say that I was first approached by Head and Shoulders, but what I thought was kind of funny, actually, it was hairstyling products geared for men. So it wasn't even like the shampoo that we recommend all the time. It was hairstyling products geared for men. But to me, Head and Shoulders was like such a big brand, and I was so excited about it. And when I told Rob about it, and when they said, like incorporate your husband, of course he was on board and really excited. And I was like, well, gosh, I don't have experience with these products. I do like Head and Shoulders. So I was trying to figure out like how I'm going to recommend it without like trying it. So, the brand, of course, made sure that I had the products before we created the content and even agreed, or signed the contract. I really honestly didn't even know much of what I was doing, how to navigate the situation. But yeah, he loved the product. I mean, I personally really like the product, the styling gel. He liked the pomade. And it was just like a still image. It was like a carousel post because Reels did not exist back then in 2020.
I was just
at that time.
When was back then?
Yeah, this was like in the first half of 2020.
So pre-COVID or during COVID?
During COVID. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So prior to that time, Mamina, how long had you been on social media? Were you just on Instagram, on TikTok, on both?
Yeah, I was on both. I was on Instagram longer. I started my professional Instagram account. I was on Instagram since like 2011 or 12, but I started my professional account in 2016, the Dr. Mamina account. And I did that when I moved back to New Orleans. I kind of wanted to make more of a name for myself. New Orleans, interestingly, is pretty saturated with dermatologists, and I wanted to sort of stand apart. I had a really strong interest, and I currently do, in taking a holistic approach to dermatology. So I wanted to talk about supplements, dietary changes, things to help with skin. Like I did a post about spearmint tea and things like that. And, I over the course of a few years, I garnered about 10,000 followers. And then I joined TikTok in 2019 because of Gary Vee. And he was saying, get on TikTok. So I joined like Labor Day, July in 2019. And I did not know what I was doing on TikTok, but in April, TikTok approached me and invited me to be part of their first educational cohort to do the Learn on TikTok initiative. And things just exploded from there. And then it kind of spilled into Instagram.
This was 2019?
Sorry, so in April of 2020 was when TikTok wanted me to be part of their Learn on TikTok initiative. And so I like learned how to make TikTok videos appropriately. You had to make 5 videos a week for 6 weeks straight. Which was such a daunting experience. I was like, what? Because I didn't even know how to properly make a video, but they had, weekly seminars on how to do that. And it felt like a tireless job, as most content creators can understand when you're creating content and like nothing is happening and you're there with like, 80 followers and nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, so I started this series called Sometimes Strange Anti-Aging Tips I Learned with My Japanese Mother. And it was a video of my mom rubbing a banana peel on her face. I just caught her doing that on a beach trip that we were on. And I was like, I got to film this. This is hilarious. And I also want to like see what the science is behind this. And so I came in from like the educational science angle with explaining her just quirky anti-aging tricks and tips, and the people loved that series. And that's, I think, how I grew initially on TikTok.
Yeah, I remember that series. And I think that's when you first came across my For You page, long before we did any partnerships together or, took any brand trips together. And I want to ask, like, as you got started on this, you had a professional Instagram account, you wanted to make a name for yourself in the local market, which is very much similar to my story in getting started. As you got going on TikTok, you had read Gary Vee, so he talks about, building a personal brand. Was your
Mhm.
goal to become a influencer of sorts, or what was, in your mind as you started this Instagram and TikTok journey at that time?
Yeah, my goal was first to create a name for myself in the local area. And, I was just starting to build a patient base at that time. And I also realized that wanted to I wanted to be an educator. The idea of an influencer seemed foreign and kind of like what is it called, like dichotomous with like being a physician. I was like, I don't even know if like the two can coexist. And um and so my purpose was like, what I want to do is to open people's minds to other forms of taking care of their skin that may have some evidence behind it, but it's not mainstream yet. um because that is a topic that I'm very passionate about. So yeah, those were my two goals, was establishing my name, and then locally, and then to just provide education to the general masses.
So
And
I
how
want to do kind of a follow up on that. So stated about your purpose in getting started on social media. You wanted to educate. Things are going well. You're on the Learn on TikTok initiative, and then to circle back to this first brand partnership, did that catch you off guard, or had you gotten to the point where you kind of expected that you were going to start getting partnerships, and did you feel prepared for that moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hadn't thought about it, but now that I'm reflecting on it, it did catch me off guard, because I really went into it, with the purpose of just educating. Um, and when I first got that brand deal, it was really exciting, because I was like, "Whoa, that's such a big brand!" And what? Like, they think I'm good enough to want to like promote this? Um, and so it was exciting. But yeah, I did not have the intentions of promoting brands for money. I was, of course, promoting brands all day, every day, just as I would in my office with my patients.
and how did they reach out to you? Did they slide into your DMs? Did they email you? What was that like?
Good question. Gosh, for that one, it probably was email. Um, yeah, because I mean, I'm gonna guess that it was my email, because most of the brand deals that I received have been email. So
And
yeah.
and so you mentioned something that I think a lot of us or a lot of people listening could probably relate to very, very well is that it's the first initial shock, almost like imposter syndrome. Like, wait, they want me to do this for them?
Exactly. I was just like, "Oh, okay. And they're gonna pay me? What? What?" It's not, it's like a concept that was just so foreign, because we recommend brands all the time without the expectation of getting paid. So it just felt like a treat.
Dustin, did you have a similar experience with when CeraVe reached out to you?
So my experience was a little bit different, and I didn't want to be presumptuous, but maybe I was, because when I got on TikTok, there were, I think Mamina was on there slightly before I was, but I think I was one of the first dermatologists that started to blow up on TikTok, and when I had like 25,000 followers, the CeraVe rep was in my office, and I'd asked her like, what do I like, I would love to work with CeraVe, like, do you know somebody I can talk to? And she really didn't. So I sent a DM to CeraVe, and I think I'm probably like, hey, there's this new social media thing called TikTok, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but if like you want to do like a partnership, I'd love to work with you, because it was a brand I'd been recommending. So I think I actually reached out to CeraVe first, and they didn't want to do a TikTok partnership, but they did want to do an Instagram partnership, which my following was much smaller there. And then I ended up doing the a live on the CeraVe account. That was um, my first partnership. And I don't know, I don't remember who the first brand was that actually reached out to me. to partnership, but my first partnership was due to me reaching out because I thought it would be cool.
I mean, but but what's interesting about both of your stories is that Dustin, you also wanted to make a name for yourself, newly starting your practice and just and doing some, let's call it what we thought free marketing or communicate. And Mamina, it's interesting also, it's a very similar story about like what your true intentions are and how you both have a passion for education. And so if we go back to Head and Shoulders for a second. So now you have these best practices for TikTok. Was it a TikTok partnership? Was it Instagram? What was the ask?
That one was for Instagram, and it was a simple carousel post. And they wanted me to incorporate my husband since it was a product for men. And it was a fun project. I remember my sister helping out because she dabbles in photography. So she brought her nice Canon and took probably like over 50 photos of us, and there were like 3 that were good, and we used those 3 in the carousel. It was fun.
I love it. And you had mentioned before about the contract. How did that work out? Did you have to have someone review it? Like what, from a formal perspective, how did you know how to manage any of that?
I think I was just very ignorant and naive when it came to contracts initially. Uh I didn't really know how to interpret it. Rob was probably on the same level as me when it comes to like understanding legalese. We did not ask for help initially. I think actually Rob was probably better than me, because he would eventually be the one to say, yeah, I think this looks good. But I didn't. Neither of us, I think, really knew in the beginning what words to look for, phrases, what the different terms meant, like usage and perpetuity and things like that. And we just looked to see what the dollar sign said. um and yeah, I mean, really anything was a bonus, so even that was not like that critical.
Totally.
But yeah.
And you mentioned usage and perpetuity. Are those words that you look for now, or what would be what I guess are the words? Yeah, let me start again. What are the words that you look for now?
Yeah, so perpetuity or in perpetuity, that phrase is something that I do look for. I do have to say that I do now with an agent, I trust them and their legal counsel to interpret everything for me. But if it were up to me and I had to like read all these contracts, I would definitely look for that phrase in perpetuity and make sure that we don't have that. We don't want brands to use our name, image, or likeness in perpetuity or forever. That, I think puts us at risk as a physician. Our opinions can change. We, and, you know, yeah, we just don't know like how the landscape will change as well over time. So I think it's important for all influencers to look out for that phrase. And to be honest, I'm still sometimes confused with the other words organic usage versus the other usage phrases. But those are the other things that are like part of the contract as well. And then the other thing is the it's not the word conflict. It's I'm sorry.
Exclusivity, maybe?
Exclusivity. Yes. Just looking for that too. And like the timeline for that. Some people will have exclusivities for like a year, which is kind of insane. So you want to make sure that those things aren't slipping through the cracks.
Can you share more like of an example what exclusivity would mean?
Yeah. So for example, if you're working with a brand like Head and Shoulders, normally they would have exclusivity with other brands. So kind of related to them. So other hair care brands like Selsun Blue or, just like Nizoral, other hair care brands. And you cannot make content about those brands within a certain time limit that they say, the exclusivity kind of time limit that they propose. And, that's where I think a lot of that's an area for negotiation. I think oftentimes when it comes to dealing with contracts is looking at that time period with exclusivity or saying that you don't want to be exclusive with this brand and other brands. I do think that as dermatologists, we recommend multiple brands. We So it's a little bit of a different situation with us. But of course, we also want to support that brand too, or that brand help with their integrity, with their brand name, by not mentioning so many other brands too. So it's a fine balance when it comes to exclusivity.
Yeah, I think that's an important message for anybody just getting started in this. Two things that kind of stood out to me is in both of our stories, Dr. Mamina, it was, not a goal to become an influencer. And I've certainly talked to many colleagues who have reached out to me because they want to know how to do what I do. I'm sure you've had the same thing. And they're jumping into it because they want the brand deals from the get-go. They want to
Mm-hmm.
become an influencer. And I've seen probably 99% of them burn out in 6 months because it takes a while to build a following. But those that are getting into it for the reason because they want to educate, because they want to put their voice out there to help people, those are the ones that are going to have success because they're doing it for the right intention. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's a message. And the second is it's really fun when that first brand partnership comes in. And like you look at that dollar sign and what the ask is, what you have to do. And that's kind of the only things you balance on that equation. And you're like, yes, I
Yeah,
can do this for this amount of money. But when you start getting into the things like the exclusivity and the duration of use, the paid, promotion, the organic usage, these are things you do have to be aware of. And it's really tempting if it's your first brand deal or one of your first few to just take an opportunity without scrutinizing a contract because brands have their own interests that they're going to try to preserve. And
mm-hmm.
it's okay. Everything is up for negotiation. You shouldn't feel bad about asking to negotiate these points. And you shouldn't, especially as a physician that is getting on social media, or, it's nice to have the extra income, but it's not essential for my livelihood. You need to be able to walk away from a contract if it puts your integrity or your brand or your name at risk. So if the
Definitely.
usage is, ridiculous, if the exclusivity is ridiculous and they're going to say you can't talk about another major brand for 6-12 months, you need to be able to walk away from that if the brand isn't flexible on those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of terms, in my opinion.
And
Yeah.
I agree. And while the dollar signs can be really big, speaking as somebody that helps advise talent, is that you may also get offers from brands either A, you don't use, B, you've never heard of, or C, you don't think that they're very good. And so it's very much okay to pass because there
Mm-hmm.
will be more. If something is coming, I can promise you there will be more, even if it's your first one. I would never advise anyone to do something for the sake of doing it, specifically a physician. From your integrity, from your oath, from everything that you believe in, I would highly, highly recommend against doing something like that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because yeah, it in the beginning I was so excited to be reached out to, like, by Head and Shoulders to recommend a product that I've never used. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Yeah, sure. Let's look into this and try it. I wouldn't. Yeah, today's a different story. But so yes, I think that's great advice that you will get more brand deals. It won't be your first or last.
And even it's a long-term relationship. It's like dating. I always say it's like
Hmm.
dating. For example, Dustin's still a very big partner. Let me start again. Dustin still works very closely with CeraVe 4 years later.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's the goal, is you want to have this organic partnership with these brands. It's something that you naturally recommend, and you develop a relationship with them. I feel like that with La Roche-Posay, and SkinCeuticals, and yeah, it's been a great, it's been a very enjoyable experience. Sometimes it could be a lot of work, but when working with them, I just feel like, yeah, these are
Mhm.
familiar people.
And low key, she just talked about SkinCeuticals, and she's a global ambassador of SkinCeuticals next to Sophia Richie. That was a big deal partnership.
Yeah, that was one of those like hallmark, whoa, okay, wait, what? Is that real?
Right.
And the thing is I couldn't share it with anyone because yeah, until they were going to release it, which was, I don't know, like a few
Wait,
months after that.
say, how long do you have to keep that one?
Um like I was offered the deal in November, and then we had to film in December, and then I had to keep my mouth shut until like February or March. But yeah, but that was fun. But I started, I mean, well, I've always recommended SkinCeuticals. I've recommended them just organically in my posts, and I remember doing it was probably 2021 when I had my first partnership with SkinCeuticals, and my rates had kind of increased at that time, and I remember them offering something that was like way below my typical rate, and this was just a year in. And but I was like, oh, do I do it? Do I do it? And I remember, and I feel like this, I don't know if this decision played a role. I think it did, but I went ahead and did it because I was like, I recommend this anyway. Um, and yeah, like this is I thought the video was a good idea. It was like the apple experiment where you put like the vitamin C on one half of the apple to see how it looks, how the oxidation or the antioxidant power works on an apple. And I remember being approached by SkinCeuticals again in the following year, and they were telling me how they really liked that video that I did for them a year ago for like, and the one that I did not get paid much to do, but that's when I was approached to be part of their global squad. And then after participating in that, they then asked me to do the Sophia Richie campaign.
So again, what I love about this story is it's the long game. It's not
It's
about,
the long game. Mm-hmm.
and it's about believing in the products and and working with the partners whose products that you believe in.
Definitely.
And I have to just mention this. I was visiting family over the holidays, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but we were, the TV was on in the background, and all of a sudden my wife points to the TV and is like, you know her, right? And I was like, yeah, that's Dr. Mamina. And it was on I think All Free and Clear, the laundry.
Yes.
Yeah, that TV
Yes.
ad, I've seen it several times now. So,
Oh my
from
gosh.
posting on TikTok to being on national TV commercials. And, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother contract negotiation when it comes to usage and everything. And so, but that's a pretty cool, jump to make from, social media to traditional media.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny about that one? I was like, when they because they reached out to me about doing this commercial, and um when I met with the team in person when I was doing the commercial shoot, I was like, how did y'all think to reach out to me? And they were like, well, our agency worked with you on a dial commercial in 2020, because they reached out to me in 2023, but they had worked with me 3 years prior, and they thought that I was just really great to work with. And so that, I feel like, is another lesson too, is I feel like it's kind of a small world. You just, these people you might run into again, and it like, yeah, I just think it's important to always maintain good relationships and just good working partnerships with people. And yeah, because they just remembered me from 3 years prior, and just enjoyed working with me. It was just a one-off dial video campaign, and so yeah, so that was fun. But yes, the commercial landscape you're seeing is a whole nother animal. And I'm very grateful for my agent for that kind of has been navigating that. I feel like I'm not really that attuned to what the rules are. So I don't know. I don't know if I have good advice on that, but it was a great commercial experience, and I did get a lot of exposure with it.
And it's a great commercial too, I can say it. So,
It,
yeah. But I think that's an important point, is when you are creating content for a brand, whether it's organically or for a brand, but these agencies will pick up a brand and they may work with all other brands. And if you deliver, for them on one campaign, they can bring you on to other brands. Or I've had this experience where I've worked with somebody on a brand through an agency, and they end up going to a different agency or a different brand. And then when discussions come up, they may say, hey, I worked with Dr. Portela, back when I was with this group, and, we're looking for somebody. This is somebody you might consider. So those relationships are important. And, you don't want to do a campaign where you phone it in. You want to give it your best shot every time. And I think it, is really important, which I try to avoid most of the time successfully, is try to avoid negatively speaking about a brand.
Yes.
There are certain brands that I do speak negatively about because I think that they're fleecing customers. But, if a brand sends me a product and they want, to explore a partnership, if I don't like the product, I'll just tell them privately, like, this isn't a right fit for me. I don't want to do it, but I'm not going to get on social media and say, oh, they sent me this and it's got way too much fragrance in there, or, this irritated my skin and I don't recommend anybody use it, because you'll burn bridges that could, deplete you of future opportunities.
And I think that that's another key learning here is make sure you try the product, make sure you have experience with the product. We always have the product sent to Dr. Portela if something that it could be a brand that he loves but has never tried the product. So you want to make sure that whatever you're endorsing or trying, you're familiar with. For sure. And then, like what Dr. Mamina did, say, well, it's a Head and Shoulders for men, so she's going to be creative and work with her husband.
Yeah, exactly. I know, because I clearly did not have experience with that product. So that's the situation, because there are situations like that where a brand that we love and trust is coming out with a new product. So clearly we haven't had experience with it. So how does one navigate that? And my rule is that, I definitely want experience with it. Ideally, sometimes it's hard because sometimes some brands like have a timeline with these campaigns, but ideally a month of feeling comfortable with it, or, being able to give it to a patient to try, just so that, we have that firsthand experience. And if it's a little bit more difficult if it's a brand that I'm not as familiar with, I really would want like a better vetting process. But yeah, I would say that's one of the challenges when it comes to working with brands is making sure you're comfortable with the product. And how do you do that if you really want to work with that brand, but you're not familiar with the product?
And going back to that Head and Shoulders and Dustin, even your first Instagram live, how does that content look to you now? Like, are you more efficient? Do you still, have to take 50 photos? Dustin, like, you're clearly so much more comfortable on camera. You are a master of hold on, let me start again. Dustin, you're very comfortable on camera right now. I'm not necessarily thinking that you were uncomfortable then, but right now you've progressed tremendously in terms of from your acting skills to being on the big screen. So I'm just curious to know what it was like looking back for both of you.
Yeah, I know that when I look back, I definitely have a good chuckle at my early content, seeing the evolution of me as a person and my camera presence and everything like that is, I think it's night and day. And it's kind of funny that back in those days is when I was really growing on TikTok, and now it's slowed down so much. And I'm like, I'm so much better on camera and in creating content, and I can do it more efficiently with better quality. But it's, again, it's not about the vanity metrics or anything like that. It's, can I more effectively deliver the education and content that I want to? And I'm certainly better at it. And I look back and I wonder, why did anybody follow me back then? But I'm grateful that they did.
I think we were all on the same level. Yeah, I was just thinking about the first video ad that I did. That was Vichy. That was also in 2020. And the quality was like the actual video quality was so poor. I was like, what? How did they allow this to be posted? And of course there were I wasn't speaking as articulately. There were more pauses. It was a little bit more awkward. So it's yes, I do also chuckle when I look back at some of these videos.
Today, we got to hear from Dr. Mamina Torregano, a board-certified dermatologist, dermatopathologist, and internist who practices in the New Orleans, Louisiana area. We got to learn about her first brand deal, navigating that from being a educator on social media, trying to make a name for herself in the local market, to getting a first brand deal, and watching how her career has expanded to even national television commercials. Dr. Mamina shared some wonderful pearls with us. We hope you're able to take them away. Thank you for joining us again on this episode, and we look forward to seeing you next time.